We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello and welcome to the Sports History Network Showcase, our in-house show featuring SHN podcasters talking sports, talking history, and talking sports history. My name is Oz Davis, host of the Sports History Network's Truly the Goats podcast, and joining me for the first episode is the natural choice, SHN founder Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude. Arnie, how's it going?
Oh, it is wonderful. I love to talk podcasts, love to talk sports history. Let's talk about them both today, Oz.
Doing a podcast talking with podcasters about podcasting is kind of meta, but we're hoping it will work without an implosion of the universe as we know it here on the Sports History Network. We'll be talking some of the instant history that we saw in round one of the NFL playoffs later in the show. But first, I'd like to say thanks for guesting on the show, Arnie, and thanks for starting up the Sports History Network.
Oh, you're wonderful. I appreciate it. We've had so many people that have wanted to join so far. I feel honored that we have so many other podcasters and sports history content creators that have joined the bandwagon at this point.
Yeah, I'm grateful there's that many sports history podcasts out there. I got to admit, there are times when I feel like nobody cares about history of any sort, much less sports history. When did you first start getting interested, Arnie, in sports history, as opposed to, like, say, just, watching football on the weekend?
So I would say the genesis of it would be really, I've been a history fan the majority of my life. There's another podcast that's out there called Hardcore History, which doesn't have anything to do with sports history, but naturally I love sports. He talks about history throughout mostly the war eras and things like that, but then he'll bring in some kind of like, what did that mean to back home? And then it got me thinking a little bit about when I started a podcast. It was going to be a fantasy football show, right? I'm the fantasy football dude, but there's about 3,582 of those shows already out there, fantasy football podcasts.
You're kidding. That was my idea.
Right, exactly. So then I just kind of started going on with it, and I was like, I know I want to start a podcast. I was really into this whole podcast medium, and then for some reason it struck me just because I was listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History and other history shows as well, and I was like, wait a second, I like football, and I'm always interested in how we got to where we are. Let's see if there's any football history podcasts out there. There weren't that many. I was like, okay, so maybe this is something I can jump into, and back in 2018, I guess went in with both feet, and I've been having an episode every week ever since.
Yep. Yeah, I totally understand. One of my favorite podcasts is a podcast called Ancient History Fangirl. Which, has absolutely zero to do with even modern history, never mind modern sports history. But they do a lot of stuff on sports history, actually. You talked a little bit about your inspiration for starting a podcast. What's your inspiration for starting the network?
Multiple reasons, but I enjoyed it. Really, it started off with my show being a solo show where I would have narration type shows. And then I started from Upton Bell reached out to me. He's the father or the son of Burt Bell, one of the first great commissioners of the league. And he said, hey, I have this book about he said, hey, I heard the episode that you did on my father, Burt Bell, and I have this book that came out, and I'd like to be on your show to have an interview and explain to you my book and all these other stories and such. And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a second. Well, first of all, what's an Upton Bell? Because I had never heard of the guy before. But But second, so I do some digging, right? And I remember sitting there, and I finally called him back and I talked to him, and it was April of 2019, somewhere around there. And I just remember sitting, and it was in the subway next to it. There's a little hotel in the parking lot, talking to this guy, Upton Bell, and he's telling me all these stories about, first of all, his mom and Al Capone and all this like intertwining different things. I'm like, wait a second. So this guy, yeah, okay, he might have some stories. Let's talk to him. And then I decided, let's go into an interview. And then later down the road, I started going more interviews, and that's all I do basically is interview shows. I interviewed Joe Ziemba, who's also on the network, When Football Was Football. And he and I got to talking, and I'm like, Joe, you're a very good storyteller. If you ever wanted to start your own podcast, I could probably help you out. And then he's like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that sometime maybe. And months go by. Joe Zagorski comes on the show, Pigskin Past. I tell the same thing to Joe Zagorski, and he's like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. Probably 3 days after the episode releases, hey, what about that podcast thing you were talking about and the whole network? So then it kind of came together, and it was more, so at the beginning it was a way to, I don't want to say, help other podcasters start their own shows that maybe don't know the technology barrier. And then from there, I was like, man, this is kind of neat. I like the idea of us being the headquarters for sports yesteryear, but not just football. So that's why we started branching out, and we're working towards, like I said, become the headquarters for sports yesteryear, to be able to let people come in, listen to maybe one show, but then find out about, like you mentioned, you're on Hello Old Sports, and they talk about a wide ranging topics of sports. And then down the road, we maybe get into your international basketball history. We have somebody on there and all these different kinds of things. And I thought it would be neat to have one location that's discoverable content for people to be able to see where different types of podcasts are out there. Granted, we'll go into more than just podcasts, but that's where we're starting. That's our grassroots at the beginning.
You say at the beginning. Do you want to give any indication as to what the future holds?
Sure. So the future will hold. What do you want? You want the 10,000 eagle eye foot view in the future? Or we want to talk about this upcoming year, because that's two different big things there.
What are your goals? Let's say in the abstract.
I'm just going to flash forward 5 to 10 years in my DeLorean. We'll go 88 miles an hour up and get that thing over there. We are comparable to, not as big, because history of sports will never be as big as current sports, but we're similar to ESPN, a platform that brings multiple areas, almost like a Netflix of sports history content, but it's in different multimedia. So there may be some live shows, there may be some videos, there will be movies, will be a production team down the road, even to help authors that want to. Okay, so Joe Zagorski, pro football researchers, they help people create their own books. I want to be able to have that platform for others and for other sports. And then we want to be able to create little mini series. Like, I love this one on History Channel where they like when they go back and they talk about the history of how America became America or something like that. I forgot the exact name of it, but they have a narration. You're learning a lot, but you're also having this little like live action footage. So that will be like, there you go. Flash forward way down the road, like production system. So it's the headquarters for sports yesteryear. You want to learn about something to do with sports history, whatever your medium is that you prefer to consume, this is where you can consume it in whichever medium you prefer to consume it.
I guess football is quite rife with the history aspect as well, because this is a game that is constantly changing. One of the things that always blows my mind is that once you get into the 19th century, and you start looking at, especially the games that we play nowadays in America, these things are completely different, right? What do you do when you start looking at a football game that's in the 1870s and looks more like soccer than football? Where do you compartmentalize that?
Oh man, wouldn't it be cool to be able to go back and really see this happen live?
Oh, hell yeah.
To see, maybe even do one of those, okay, going back to the shows, I would love to have like an episode series that kind of takes the transition and evolution of the game of football throughout, and each series or each episode intertwines into it. I think that's one thing that the network will be able to do too, is to be able to give maybe that perspective of, you bring up soccer and you brought up rugby before. Me personally, Arnie Chapman, I only really watch NFL. That's all I really paid attention to. However, I'm interested in all these other sports. Growing up, I've played a lot of other sports. I would be interested, I think, in soccer history if I was automatically well, here's 5 different shows for you to listen to. Here you go. Boom, 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 boom. And I think that's how the Sports History Network can help the little guy that doesn't know how to maybe promote their podcast and things like that, tie it all in together to be able to discover this content for the different listeners that are out there.
Welcome to the Football History Dude podcast, a weekly show where each episode is a journey back in time to learn about the rich history of the NFL. From the founding of the league in a Hutmobile auto showroom in Canton, Ohio, all the way to what it is today, America's favorite sport and a behemoth of an industry.
Right. As of this recording, the latest episode of the Football History Dude, episode 150, by the way, so congratulations on that, is entitled The Game Before the Money. And as guest, you have writer Jackson Michael. Give us a teaser for that episode if you can.
Well, think about if you were able to go back. It's the book is called The Game Before the Money, The Voices of the Men Who Built the NFL. And he was able to interview so many people. And we're talking like Bart Starr and players like that helped build the NFL before, I'm using air quotes here, game before the money, right? Before free agency. So he wanted to go back and relive their stories through their eyes. It's like an oratory type of explanation of how the NFL came to be before the money was involved. So let's just say he has that and he has some other things in there, and we'll just leave it at that as far as where we're at.
Okay, listen to episode 150 of the Football History Dude on Sports History Network. You're a Detroit Lions fan, so I guess thank you for your service. But you probably still watch the playoffs, I assume. And I just wanted to know, since it's not all about history, not entirely about history here on the Sports History Network Showcase podcast, what were your takeaways from the weekend, if any?
Well, apparently you don't need coaching to be able to beat a... That's one thing.
Well...
No, I don't believe that for a second. I think that there was... If they had fans in the stands, one thing that would have been a little bit different, but also there was that extra level of motivation for a team that won in the trenches. It only takes a split second or a couple inches or a couple feet, whatever you want to say, to really win in the trenches. And that's just what they did. I mean, let's go build their line at the beginning. And so for that game, I kept watching my app and I saw 28-0 first quarter. I'm like, this app must not be working because I wasn't able to watch. And then I turned the game on and I'm like, whoa, this is for real. What is going on here?
It's giving me the score from 1963. What's
right.
going on? It says Jim Brown's got 4 touchdowns.
Exactly. So, I mean, then they tried to come back, which made it exciting. And then, of course, back and forth. And then finally they ended up, the Browns are going to go on and they're going to have, the Chiefs are a different type of team, let's just say that, than what the Steelers are at this point. And
But Arnie, you're a football guy. So you have some sense of perspective on this. Now everybody going into these playoffs, and listen to me, this was 4 days ago, was talking about how, there's 6 quarterbacks that are 35 years and older. Yeah, but there's 6 quarterbacks that are under 26. I mean, isn't there some element of not even necessarily like passing the torch, but I mean, some of these guys are just old.
yeah,
The fact that Drew Brees could only lead his Saints to a 7-3 halftime lead over the Chicago 9-7. Am I correct? 9-7 Chicago, 8-8 Chicago Bears. I mean, this is kind of like dead man walking, and I felt like that about the Steelers. I mean, this was the classic back into the playoffs team, right? This is the classic team that ends the season 1-4, 0-5, whatever, but they accumulated so many wins at the beginning of the year that they just back in. And of course, this weekend, who do you have? You have Mahomes, you have Jackson. Okay, Tom Brady still brings up that average, but the Rams are going to be running a young quarterback. I think that this is really what we're looking at. I think we're kind of looking at a transition year in NFL football.
Well, no matter what, after this weekend, the average goes down because Brady and Brees play against each other. So
Yep.
We'll see what happens.
Senior citizens is out.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. This is the game. The speed is just so much. Those defensive linemen, it's not like they were back. We'll go back to history. It's not the same as it used to be. They're Aaron Donald. I mean, have you seen that guy? He's a defensive tackle, but he resembles Ronnie Coleman, if you catch that reference, if you know who that guy is. Ronnie Coleman was Mr. Olympia for like 8 years or something like that. for anybody that's not sure who I'm referencing.
Aaron, this is another conversation that I want to have with some of our other podcasters here at Sports History Network. But Aaron Donald and Tom Brady really bring into question, like, what does that mean to be the greatest of all time in NFL football? I mean, everybody is rushing to call Tom Brady the GOAT. And, we've already forgotten about a guy who was 50% better than anybody else who played his position. We're also forgetting about a guy named Lawrence Taylor, who could dominate a game as a defensive player like nobody, probably until Aaron Donald. And Aaron Donald is another one. So this has always been a fascinating question for me, is what does GOAT mean in football, particularly NFL football, when the specialization is so huge? You made the joking comment before, but about how we don't need coaches, but I almost wonder if, the problem with football, even Vince Lombardi said this, that the thing that keeps football from being a perfect game is the unnecessary importance of the quarterback. And I almost wonder, do we kind of see maybe a tiny bit of motion away from that? Or is it just that the Rams defense is an outlier?
Yeah, the Rams defense, they're just phenomenal. I don't know if I would say that. Maybe it'll take at some point in time, sure, but you're not going to win without a good quarterback at this point. That's still, in my mind, the most important position in sports, as far as you either have one or you don't, and you have a chance to win or you don't, kind of thing long term.
Can you win with Baker Mayfield as your quarterback?
With that offensive line and that running game and that defense, you have a shot. I mean,
how about it? Yeah.
He's he's not as bad as what Jameis Winston. See, the thing is there's where you talk about coaching matters, because Stefanski comes in and he totally transformed between not just how he handled him, but also with the play calling. He didn't put him in the positions to fail, just like maybe was it Freddie Kitchens, I think was the guy's name. Kind of like Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston. It's like, hey, go out there, do your thing, throw 3 pick sixes, and then you'll get 5,000 passing yards because you have to catch up every time. So I think that's where coaching, one of the things they understand. Belichick is Belichick. I mean, he understood who his player was, and he would fit the scheme around his player personnel versus the other way around, try to fit the players to the scheme.
But on the other hand, I mean, look at what's happened in Buffalo this season. Everybody's shaking their heads going, oh my God, Josh Allen's gone from bottom 5 effective quarterback to top 5 effective quarterback. But it's Stephon Diggs, isn't it?
That makes a big difference when you have a guy who can win in double coverage. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and here it is, right? Here's a guy who gets, in a very good game, 9 catches. And yet the game is so specialized that 9 plays can turn your team into a Super Bowl contender.
It opens up the field. I mean, the entire field gets opened up.
Right. Speaking of which, we can almost go out on this. What do you like for the Super Bowl at this point?
At this point in time, it's hard for me not to say that there's going to be a repeat. That team's just too good. At this point in time, that's where I'm going to put my stake in the sand. I mean, now you can edit this in when it's a different team, and I'll give you I'll say all the teams so you can edit it in for me.
It's like the bit on the Simpsons Super Bowl episode. I've always been a fan of the Atlanta Falcons. You can never count out the Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
But I like the Denver Broncos.
How about you?
And then it ends with, I've heard that President Clinton will be at the game. Love it. That's one of my all-time favorite Simpsons bits. All right, Arnie, how would you like to take us out? Tell us what's next for Football History Dude. Tell us what's next for the network, and tell us how they can find you besides at sportshistorynetwork.com.
So the next for the Football History Dude is we have a member of the Sports History Network on the show, Darren Hayes, who I interviewed tonight. And I don't know how he's going to be feeling that he's a Steelers fan. So we'll see if we can get a good interview out of him. But then for moving forward, I'll just announce it on this show. I am going from weekly to bi-weekly, starting with this episode. So the next, it'll be 2 weeks after this. The reason being is I want to put as much effort as I can into growing the Sports History Network, because I believe that we will become the headquarters for sports yesteryear. We have a great group of, I guess we could say, founding forefathers, and we have 13 strong starting now, but the goal is to just become that place where we can, what we call, create the stands and give that home field advantage to podcasters and other sports history content creators out there that maybe are missing a little bit in the technology, maybe missing a little bit in the networking. Whatever it is, our goal is to help those creators fill that gap, so then we can, I'm using air quotes again, help them fill their stands with listeners, so then we can all rise together and we can just make it so all of the stories that are out there from the history of sports, we can relive, we can retell, and we can share it with generations to come.
Okay, now when you say fill those stands, you don't mean with those like COVID cardboard cutout people.
I mean, if we have to at the beginning, just for some stats.
They just don't make much noise on a podcast. That's the problem.
Well, they're good listeners then.
That's true. That's true. In any case, Arnie, once again, thank you for being the founder of the Sports History Network. Thank you for appearing on the show today.
Thank you, Oz. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, for the Sports History Network Showcase, I'm Oz Davis. We'll be back next week with another member of the Sports History Network. Until that time, check out all the great shows right here on sportshistorynetwork.com. Talk to you soon.
Boom.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.